Hello everyone and welcome to my channel, Dark Terrors. Are you ready to listen to 3 scary stories that took place in the United States in the 1800s? Below you will find 3 stories, each of which could be true or presumed to be. These are tales that have fascinated and frightened many people over the years, becoming true cultural phenomena. However, the truth behind these stories often remains dark and shrouded in mystery. So, take them with a healthy dose of skepticism and let yourself be drawn in by the allure of mystery. All that's left is to turn on the lights, lock the doors, and prepare to have shivers run down your spine.
History 1. The Man at the Window. In 1828, a series of mysterious murders terrorized the inhabitants of the city of New Orleans. The killer, who became known as the Man of the Window, killed his victims with an axe and left their bodies exposed to everyone's sight, leaning against the window. It was said that the killer was a necrophile and that his victims had been mutilated post-mortem. Moreover, it is told that at night one can still hear the screams of the victims coming from the window where they were exposed. The city was in a panic, and the authorities were unable to stop the mysterious killer. The murders continued for months, and every time a new corpse was discovered, the fear among the inhabitants increased even more. People began to barricade themselves at home at night, hoping to avoid the watchful eye of the murderer. But no matter how much they barricaded themselves, the Man of the Window always seemed to find them. One night, a young woman named Emily was walking alone on the deserted streets of New Orleans. As she was about to return home, she heard footsteps behind her. She turned around but saw no one. She continued walking, but the footsteps seemed to be getting closer. Suddenly, she felt a hand on her neck and was dragged into a dark alley. When she opened her eyes, she found herself face to face with the Man of the Window. Emily tried to scream, but the killer covered her mouth with a hand. The young woman tried to struggle, but the killer was too strong for her. The Man of the Window pushed her against a wall and pulled out an axe. Emily realized that her end was near and closed her eyes, ready to face death. But suddenly, the killer stopped. He turned around and ran away without saying a word. Emily was found shortly after, traumatized but alive. She couldn't explain what had happened. Many thought that the Man of the Window had been caught by panic and had decided to let her go. But Emily knew that there was something more disturbing behind that sudden flight. From that night on, Emily was never the same. She couldn't forget the smell of death she had felt on her skin, nor the feeling of terror that had engulfed her when she had faced the Man of the Window. And even though the killer hadn't finished his job that night, Emily knew she would never be safe again. The city was in turmoil, and the authorities had completely lost control of the situation. From that moment on, Emily never went out alone at night and tried to avoid the poorly lit streets of the city. But despite her efforts, the memory of the encounter with the Man of the Window continued to haunt her. Years passed, and the murders ceased, but the terror that the killer had sown in the city never completely disappeared. The legend of the Man of the Window continued to spread among the inhabitants of New Orleans and became part of the city's popular culture. Today, many tourists visit the city to immerse themselves in the unique atmosphere of the French Quarter and to discover the story of the Man of the Window. The legend has inspired movies, books, and even a TV series. But despite its popularity, the mystery of the Man of the Window has never been solved. It is said that the killer left the city or died a natural death. But for the inhabitants of New Orleans, the Man of the Window is still alive and continues to wander the streets, looking for the next victim.
Story 2. The Ghost of the Mill. In 1850, in a small town in New Jersey, there was a mill that provided work for many of the area's residents. But a terrible incident forever changed the lives of the town's inhabitants. One night, the mill caught fire and the blaze quickly spread, killing all of the workers except for one, the mill owner, who miraculously managed to save himself. It is said that after that night, the ghost of the mill owner began to wander near the building, tormenting those who dared to get too close. According to legend, the mill owner's ghost was an alchemist who was trying to create the elixir of immortality, using the mill workers as human guinea pigs. It is said that the ghost has the habit of suddenly appearing, bringing with him a strong smell of burning, and that he can put people into a hypnotic trance, making them relive the mill fire. The story of the burned mill and the ghost of the owner quickly spread throughout the town, becoming one of the most disturbing tales among the inhabitants. Many were curious to see the ghost with their own eyes, but no one dared to get too close to the burning building. However, there was a young woman named Sarah who was not so easily frightened. Sarah was a brave and adventurous girl who did not believe in ghost stories and wanted to prove to everyone that there was nothing to fear. One evening, Sarah decided to venture to the abandoned mill. She approached the building cautiously, trying not to make any noise. As she approached the mill's door, she smelled a strong odor of burning that made her eyes water. However, determined to see the mill owner's ghost, she pushed forward. As soon as she entered the mill, Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. It was dark and silent, and it seemed like the building was empty. But then, suddenly, a figure appeared in front of her. It was the ghost of the mill owner. His face was distorted with anger and his hands were stretched out toward her. Sarah tried to escape, but the ghost seemed to prevent her from moving. Then, the ghost made a gesture with his hand and Sarah found herself in a trance. Suddenly, she found herself reliving the mill fire. She could feel the heat of the fire and feel the smoke burning her lungs. It was as if she was trapped in the past, unable to return to the present. After a while, Sarah managed to free herself from the trance and fled from the mill. When she reached the town, she told anyone who would listen about her experience. Many did not believe her, but some were convinced that she had really seen the ghost of the mill owner. From that night on, Sarah was never the same. She was tormented by nightmares and often woke up screaming. She couldn't forget the smell of the fire and the feeling of being trapped in the past. Although many continued to think that the story of the mill ghost was just a legend, Sarah knew that she had seen something real. The abandoned mill burned down completely a few years after Sarah's encounter with the mill owner's ghost. But many town residents still swear that they can smell the fire and see the ghost of the mill owner wandering near the burned building. Even though the story has been passed down from generation to generation, no one has ever been able to fully explain the truth behind the mill fire and the presence of the ghost.
Story 3: The Devil's House. The Amityville House was a two-story colonial-style house with a large porch and stained glass windows. It was built in the early 1800s and had been home to several families over the decades. However, no family had ever experienced the horror that the DeFeo family would encounter. The DeFeo family moved into the Amityville house in 1872, and everything seemed fine at first. However, strange things began to happen. Strange noises could be heard in the house, as if someone or something was walking in the empty rooms. Objects moved on their own, doors opened and closed without any logical explanation. The family began to feel increasingly uncomfortable in their home, and often woke up in the middle of the night, terrified by mysterious noises and presences. But the worst thing happened on the night of November 13, 1872. All members of the family fell asleep deeply that night, but were awakened by a deafening noise coming from the attic. When they got up to see what was happening, they were faced with a terrible scene. Furniture overturned, broken glass and walls covered in blood. Their youngest daughter, Jenny, had been dragged from her bed and thrown violently against the wall, leaving her seriously injured. The DeFeo family was forced to flee from the house that very night, and never returned. The police investigated the incident and found that no stranger had entered the house that night. The DeFeo family was suspected of the incident, but all members of the family swore they were innocent. From then on, the Amityville house was abandoned and left to decay. However, the fame of the haunted house spread quickly, and many ventured into the house to try to discover the truth about what happened. Many reported being tormented by malevolent presences, hearing sinister voices, and seeing ghostly apparitions. Over the decades, the Amityville house changed owners several times, but no one was able to stay in the house for long. Some claimed to hear the voice of a crying child, others to see shadows moving in the empty house. It was said that the house was haunted by demons and had become a gateway to hell. Many people tried to exorcise the house, but without success. Many rumors circulated about the Devil's House, as it was called by all the citizens of Amityville. Some claimed that the house was built on an Indian burial ground, and that this was the reason why paranormal presences manifested themselves. Others believed that the previous owner had committed terrible murders inside the house, leaving the darkness that still haunted the walls. Over the years, many brave souls ventured inside the Devil's House, but no one was ever able to stay for long. The explorers' testimonies all agree in describing the house as an unsettling place full of malevolent presences, with an oppressive atmosphere that seems to crush all hope of escape. There are also those who claim to have seen shadows moving rapidly along the house's corridors, as if they were invisible human beings. Others have reported hearing voices calling them by name, but coming from nowhere. The Devil's House is still the subject of debate between skeptics and believers, between those who believe it is only a legend and those who are convinced of its real existence. What is certain is that the house has inspired many writers, directors, and artists, and has become a symbol of American popular culture. The Devil's House is still the subject of debate between skeptics and believers, between those who believe it is only a legend and those who are convinced of its real existence. What is certain is that the house has inspired many writers, directors, and artists, and has become a symbol of American popular culture.
Here are 3 scary stories that shook the United States in the 1800s. Are you still alive? I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you survived watching it, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, like the video, comment, and share it with your friends. Also, don't forget to turn on the notification bell to not miss the next terrifying stories on Dark Terrors. Until next time, some text goes here.